Hello Year 11, today's lesson focuses on the Nazi Party 1924 to 1929. So if you can put that in your books as a title and then on to the next slide. Okay, just a brief recap. The period 24 to 29 is referred to as the lean years for the Nazis, meaning their party didn't do so well. So just a reminder of the story so far. In 1919, the Weimar government was formed. It was blamed for losing the war and signing the Treaty of Versailles. So in response, Hitler forms the Nazi Party to protest against the Weimar Republic. He writes a manifesto, the 25 points, outlining his party's ideas: nationalistic, deeply racist, deeply aggressive. Hitler forms the SA, sometimes called the Stormtroopers or Brown Shirts, to help him. 1923, hyperinflation hits Germany. So in 1923, the Nazis attempt a failed putsch in Munich. Hitler is, of course, imprisoned. And in the meantime, in 1924, things improve for the Weimar government. The Dawes Plan comes into force. US loans revive the German economy. So just in your own words, could you get those bullet points into your book? And then it'll be on to the next slide. Okay, now you need to turn in your booklets to where you've got this page, and this will explain to us what Hitler was doing when he gets out of prison to revive the Nazi Party's fortunes. Okay, that's the summary of the first box. Why was the Nazi Party weak in 1925? Well, there's a number of reasons. Firstly, Hitler's only just come out of prison after the Munich putsch, so the Nazis have been without a leader. And actually after the putsch, the Nazi Party had been banned, and it had split into two groups, and it survived in secret. One group in the north tended to be quite socialist, while the other in the south was more nationalistic. Neither of these groups have been able to call themselves the Nazi Party, so the party is split. And as the economy improved with the help of the Dawes Plan, people began to feel better about the Weimar Republic. So this made them less inclined to support extreme groups like the Nazis. So just on to the next slide. So Hitler comes up with some new ideas whilst in prison. He decides not to try any more putsches. They were definitely too unpredictable and you had to rely on other people to be successful. And he realised the Nazi Party would have to come to power legally through being elected by the voters. If they got enough votes, then they would be able to change the constitution to allow Hitler to become a dictator. Destroying democracy from within is his plan. So obviously the Nazi Party would have to become a party that the electors would vote for. So how did Hitler make the Nazi Party much more likely to be elected? So Hitler first of all persuaded the Bavarian state government to lift the ban on the Nazis. The party was relaunched in 1925. He reunited it, healing the split, by calling a meeting in the town of Bamberg in 1926. He made a number of speeches to heal the split, and he brought the party back together. Hitler enforced the Führer principle. Under the Führer principle, Hitler would be recognised as the one and only leader of the party. This made it easier for voters to identify with the Nazis. He decided to increase the amount of publicity and propaganda the Nazi Party put out, so they would become much more a high-profile party. They trained themselves in public speaking so they would be able to put forward their ideas to the voters much more effectively. Now, on the next slide, we're just going to go through something called the Gauss system. So Hitler reorganised the party into a system which would allow everyone in Germany to know who the Nazi Party were and to have access to them. Germany was divided up into areas called Gau. You can see that on the left-hand map. Each Gau had a leader called a Gauleiter. Under him there was a chain of others ending in someone, and you can see this person on the right-hand side, called the Blockleiter. Blockleiters knew everyone in their district and could inform the Nazis of the issues that would gain voters in their area. So this was quite sophisticated. The Nazis divided Germany up, made sure there's a Gauleiter running every area, and within that Gau there was a whole chain of Nazis ending in a Blockleiter who had his ear to the ground on local issues in towns and villages. So when, for example, the Nazis campaigned in the south, where it was predominantly agricultural, they could target their propaganda at the farmers and know their farmers' grievances and issues. So really quite sophisticated. On to the next slide. Okay, and the final thing Hitler did to grow the popularity of the Nazis in the 1920s was he set up groups like the Hitler Youth to widen Nazi appeal. Hitler believed that if he could attract voters when they were young, they would become more committed Nazis. So he set up groups like the Hitler Youth, and you can see this on this image here. On to the next slide. So a pretty straightforward task now. You've got this grid. You have to, as it suggests, bullet point the situation back in 1925, all the problems the Nazis faced, evidence the new tactics that Hitler's going to take, his new approaches, and then bullet point the transformations he makes to his party, things like the Gauss system, the Hitler Youth, the focus on the Führer principle, the focus on publicity and propaganda. Once you've done that, you can move on to the next slide. Okay, there is some evidence that Hitler did achieve a few things here. He has 100,000 members by 1928. The party was now nationwide and had begun to attract all classes. Hitler had modernized his party and made it an efficient organization, but obviously looking at the numbers, something was still missing. They only returned a meagre number of MPs at the elections in 1928 and get a tiny share of the vote. So you've got one box missing to fill in, the right hand side box at the bottom, and this is simple. Imagine that it's 1928. Imagine that you work for the security services of the Weimar government, their version of MI5 if you will. So you're looking at terrorist threats in Germany, potential dangers for the Weimar government. So you just got to produce a threat assessment of Hitler and the Nazi Party in this final box. Obviously you've got your pro forma document and you've got the information in the handout. So just on to the next little bit. So you've got to acknowledge obviously that Hitler's had some successes, so he is a little bit of a threat, but you must focus on the fact that the 1928 election reveals that they're not a very popular party at all, and probably the Weimar government in 1928 can afford to ignore them. Their threat is minimal, purely because this is the golden age of Weimar. The Dawes Plan has brought American money in, people are feeling better off, jobs are there, wages are up, people are contented and happy, and as such the Nazis aren't doing so well. And that concludes our task for today. Thanks for listening.